Hello, and thank you for joining me on ILTV. I'm Aaron Porras, and for the last few years, it's been my pleasure to provide you with the insider's look at Israel and the Middle East in English. Your support for us means the world. But there's so much more of Israel to see and do. That's why I'm honored to introduce our all-new streaming platform, ILTV+, where you'll find all of the classic and original ILTV content that you know and love, plus so much more. I'm talking more direct engagement with me and the ILTV team, live streams from holy sites, interviews and lectures with the nation's top minds and personalities, and virtual walking tours across the country, just to name a few. What you won't find are ads, sponsored content, and special interests. It's just Israel 24/7 in the palm of your hand. So sign up for your free trial today at ILTV.tv or through the Apple app and Google Play stores. See you there. Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and before we begin, I want to again remind you quickly not to forget about our all-new streaming platform, ILTV+, available now on every app store and at ILTV.tv. Now, coming up in today's newscast, Iran pressing harder on its neighbors. The Ayatollah regime accused, among other things, of attempting to assassinate the Prime Minister of Iraq. Meanwhile, Jerusalem tells the White House to look further east if it wants to open a new Palestinian Authority consulate. And finally, stay tuned as an Israeli team literally filtering carbon right from the atmosphere using balloons. European lawmakers are reeling this weekend from an enlightening experience along the northern Israeli border. As they begin their 5-day visit in Israel, the IDF taking members of European Parliament deep into Hezbollah's cross-border terror tunnels. The IDF on Thursday taking some 20 European parliamentarians and advisors up to the northern Israel-Lebanon border. And there the delegation descending deep underground for a first-hand look at the threat that Iran poses via its terror proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah. And the visitors shocked by what they found.
I mean, it becomes so more visible when you're here, when you're experiencing the closeness to the border that is actually the border to Iran. And also the fact that the structure, the patience to dig through everything, to try to come and promote terror attacks in that way. And also it's really upsetting to see where our money is going.
The tunnel, one of many exposed by Israel since 2019, starting from about 1 kilometer within Lebanon and stretching across the DMZ nearly 300 meters into Israeli territory, almost all the way to the town of Zarit. And the whole thing at a depth of about 80 meters or nearly 22 stories, rigged with electrical wires, fuse boxes, and communications equipment.
I felt a strong emotion because, of course, we hear about the tunnels in the news, we read about them in the paper, but seeing it in reality like this is is really making it very concrete. So I was shocked to see how much patience people can invest in hate, how much money, how much energy in hating someone else's country, to be willing to come in like this. So it really shocked me.
Israel, on the other hand, increasingly investing in impressive sensory technology geared at detecting such attempted incursions. For one, in response to terror tunnels built both by Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in the south, the IDF installing underground smart systems to detect tunnel construction, and in this way, Israel preemptively destroying dozens of apparent passageways. Then, in response to the growing threat of missiles, Israel Aerospace Industries expanding the nation's missile defense systems with the invention of a special sensory balloon. The massive blimp being deployed for testing late last week, outfitted with advanced radar systems and intended for singling out rockets, drones, and the like for early response.
בלון הגילוי האווירי ישייט בגובה רב, יצפה לטווחים רחוקים ויאפשר יכולת גילוי מקסימלית של איומים מתקדמים מכיוונים שונים.
Now, meanwhile, in addition to terror tunnels and rockets on Israel's borders, Iran continuing to increase offensive pressures on all of its other regional neighbors. For one, 6 more individuals linked to Iran arrested in Cyprus over the weekend for allegedly planning terror attacks against Israelis on the island nation. Then the newly elected Prime Minister of Iraq surviving an assassination attempt outside of his home, an allegedly Iranian armed drone injuring several members of Prime Minister al-Khadimi's personal security team. Joining to discuss is director of the Europa Institute at Bar-Ilan University, Professor Shlomo Shapiro. Thank you so much for being with us, Professor.
Hello.
Now, how confidently can we link these incidents to Iran?
I think that the assassination attempt on Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Khadimi can very well be connected to Iran for two reasons. First of all, the level of sophistication of the attack. Apparently, there were two drones that attacked very precisely, very directly on him and his entourage. He was very lucky to remain alive. As you said, other people were injured quite severely. Regarding the events in Cyprus, I think that's probably an example to the other side of things. We need to be cautious in attributing things to Iran. We can't really do it directly. Not everything that happens against Israel or Israeli targets is attributable to Iran. But I think we should note that one of the main ways by which Iran is attacking Israel now is the cyberspace realm. And we see Israeli companies, corporations, even universities and hospitals being attacked by Iranians. That is where the main war takes place at the moment.
All right, well, back to some of these attacks, the United States is already condemning the drone attack in Iraq as a terror attack. But, what about the rest of the world? Where do they stand on this? Are they outspoken in condemning this attack? Are they outspoken in condemning Iran for this attack? Or are they more or less silent?
The rest of the world, especially after the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, is quite tired from what's happening in the Middle East in its wider form. And they're mainly dealing with the repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic and problems in Europe, of the European Union. The Iranians know that world attention is diverted away from them, and that is why they can afford to get away with such things.
All right, now, as I mentioned earlier, Israel is giving members of European Parliament a tour. They started already last weekend giving a tour of Hezbollah's cross-border attack tunnels in the north, Hezbollah being a terror proxy of Iran in Lebanon. So how might this affect JCPOA negotiations, for example, especially now that the United States is not so involved in those talks?
I think that many people in Europe, politicians, statesmen, and ordinary citizens feel more and more negatively towards Iran and averse towards these negotiations, which apparently went nowhere in the past. These negotiations now are moving ahead very slowly, as if both sides, not just the Europeans, are not really convinced that this is going to end up with a firm agreement.
Are there any chances, in your opinion, that the EU will earnestly push at least to include limits on Iran's malign activities in the region in a new deal?
I believe that the European Union in general does not want to see a nuclear-armed Iran. The question is, or as they say, the devil is in the details. What are going to be the various safeguards within any potential agreement that would really make it impossible for the Iranians to progress? It was not effective in the past as much as we would have wanted to. And I think both sides might reach some piece of paper, but whether that piece of paper is going to be effective or not, I'm quite skeptical.
All right, Professor Shlomo Shapiro, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.